In this geometry tutorial, we are going to be measuring angles. And let's start at the very beginning. And notice on this angle, I've got two rays that come together to the vertex, to a point, and we are measuring the space that is between those two rays. Okay? And also, the measure of a unit angle is 1 degree. Well, what do I mean by that? Let's look at this protractor here. This is the tool that we're going to use to measure this angle. Well, do you see these little ticks? Here starts at 0. Here's a tick, 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 all the way to 5, then to 10, 20, 30, all the way up to 90, past 90, 100, and then all the way down to 180. Well, 180 degrees is half of a circle. And maybe you know this, but all the way around, then double 180, which is 360. 360 degrees. You think of a bicycle, you know, a trick bike on a trick bike, or somebody on a skateboard, and they do a full twist. They turn all the way around. They call it a 360, right? So all the way around, my circle is 360 degrees. Well, then think about 360 or 36. A quarter of the way up gets me to 90, right? So think about that. And then another quarter gets me to 180, and then another gets me to 270, and then all the way up to 360, because I know that 9 times 4 is 36, so then I also know that 90 times 4 is 360. All right, so now let's try to bring this over and measure this angle. I'm going to pull my protractor over, and I'm going to line up this part of my measuring tool, my protractor, right on the vertex of my angle. And so now remember, we're measuring this, and I line it up right on my 0 degrees. And so my arrow here extends all the way through my 0, which is this tick right here. Here's the 0 line. And now I always measure from the zero. And I think that's the trickiest part for students, is counting from the 0 line, because look at this set of numbers that starts with 180. Well, I only use that line of numbers when I have my angle lined up through the 0 on the other side that you can't see. So this is the 0 where my one ray goes through, and so I count from my 0. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. Right here is where this arrow goes, and that's lined up with the 70 tick on the outside. So that angle is 70 degrees. Okay, so let's try another one. All right, let's try this new angle right here. And again, remember, we're going to be measuring the space between this ray and this ray right there. Okay, so let's pull that protractor over, and let's line up this spot right here, right straight below the 90-degree angle, and let's pull it all the way over, line up that right on the vertex of my angle. It's a little finicky here. I need it to go over just a scotch. Come on. All right, and now this line tracks right through the 0. So I've lined up this line right here that goes to 0 and extends out to this tick right there. And now I'm going to count from that 0 right there, 10, 20, 30. Now, this gets a little bit trickier. This line is going right through this tick right here. Now, this tick here represents the middle of between 40 and 30, right? So 140 if I'm counting from the other side, or I'm measuring from the other side, and 150 if I was starting over at the other 0. So this tick right here represents 40, and this tick right here represents 30, and this arrow goes right through the middle. Well, what's the number between 30 and 40? What's halfway between? This is a tricky thing for a lot of students. Halfway between 30 and 40 is 35. So this is a 35-degree angle. Now let's try an angle that points in the other direction. All right, now this angle faces the other way, right? So now let's grab this protractor over here, and let's bring them over, and let's line up that same thing on the vertex right here. This place right here in the middle, right on the vertex. But now this arrow is not lined up on my 0, and that is absolutely key. So I need to turn this around a little bit and line it right up and right about there. Perfect. All right, now we've got it lined up. And remember, we're measuring the space in between the two rays, right? So now this tick right here is where it crosses over, which represents 0. And then here's 10, here's 20, here's 30, and here's 40. Okay, so let's start counting it. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And now this gets a little tricky. This arrow goes right through here, right? And as you can see, here's 40 and here's 35. So that arrow goes right through the middle point between 30 and 45. So I would call this a 35-degree angle. Yes? I think so. Looks good to me. Now let's make it an obtuse angle. So far we've done all acute angles. Now let's make him be obtuse. Okay, this is an angle that is definitely bigger than 90 degrees. If this angle were 90 degrees, the arrow would be pointing straight up here, right? But you can see this is bigger. It goes beyond 90 degrees. So this is definitely an obtuse angle. So the question is, how much? All right, so now look, let's count. We're going to count from 0 right here. This is where it crosses. We're going to count from this 0, never from the 180, because this ray goes right through the 0. That's always where we start. So let's go. 10, 20 degrees, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Bigger than 90? 100. Here's 100. And here's 110. So I know that the degree of this angle is between 100 and 110. Well, here's 105. And so if you look at the midpoint of this angle, of this ray, it's not quite at 105. I would probably put this at 103. So it's more than 100, less than 110, and really even less than 105. So I would say that this angle is 103 degrees. So before I sign off, let's review. We want to make sure on our protractor that we line up this midpoint here below the 90 right on the vertex, and we line up the 0 line right across our ray or line on one side of our angle, and then we count from that 0 where that line crosses through the 0, whether it's this side or this side. If the angle goes this way, we count from that 0. If the angle's going this way and it goes through the 0, we always count from this 0. And if you remember that, you shouldn't go wrong. Thanks so much for tuning in.